Number 10. The Collect Call of Cthulhu.
Hmm. How many kids know who H.P. Lovecraft is? I doubt very many, unless you're a really big bookworm. So, does that mean we shouldn't mention him in children's cartoons, since they wouldn't be familiar with him? Hell no!
One of the best ways to introduce someone to a generation who has never heard of him is to mention them in popular cartoons. Like in this case, H.P. Lovecraft in The Real Ghostbusters. It's a perfect combination. He wrote about horror and weird tales, so why not mention them here? Anyway, the story is about the Necronomicon, a spellbook that Lovecraft wrote about, is being placed on display at the New York Public Library. One of the people who works at the library feels uncomfortable with putting the Necronomicon on full display because of the evil spells it contains, and it could be stolen and used for evil. Clark Ashton, his associate, does not believe the Necronomicon is anything but a harmless book. Well, this harmless book becomes harmful when followers of Cthulhu, or Cthulhu as he's pronounced in according to H.P. Lovecraft, but here he's called Cthulhu. Why they called him Cthulhu and not Cthulhu, I don't know. It's just what they call him. Anyway, these followers steal the book, and the Ghostbusters are brought in to try to retrieve it because the followers of Cthulhu or Little Mary Sunshine, whatever he's called, could be brought about and destroy the entire world. What doesn't bring about the destruction of the world in this series?
You know, come to think of it, why would you bring a book that can conjure up a creature as deadly as Cthulhu on display at a library? Why not just lock it up or burn it? That's like asking for trouble to put on display. That's just my 2 cents. What makes this episode work so well is just how creepy it is.
One part in particular that always frightened me as a child was when a guard went to investigate a noise. He was about ready to turn on the lights when a tentacle grabs his hand, preventing him from doing so. He turns around and shines his flashlight into this, the spawn of Cthulhu.
Is he gone? Is he... oh, thank goodness.
Number 9. Elementary My Dear Winston.
The episode Boo Dunnett establishes the fact that Winston is a huge fan of mysteries. So it was only natural that the Ghostbusters would do an episode where they meet the most famous fictional detective of all time, Sherlock Holmes.
The ghost of Professor Moriarty, Sherlock Holmes' longtime rival, is going around sucking out the evil energy of all objects that has evil so he can come back to life. He kidnaps Dr. Watson, or the ghost of Dr. Watson, and holds him hostage. The ghost of Sherlock Holmes enlists the aid of Winston Zedmore, who is a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes, in order to take out the evil ghost of Professor Moriarty.
Is Elementary My Dear Winston saying that Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Professor Moriarty were real people? No. This episode fully acknowledges they're fictional characters. So, if they're fictional characters, why are they ghosts?
According to Egon, because so many people believe Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Professor Moriarty were real people, that belief manifested itself into the forms that they are, and what he termed as belief made manifest. Because they are not real ghosts per se, the Ghostbusters proton packs have zero effect on them.
The reason why this episode is on the list is because I love Sherlock Holmes. He is awesome. I mean, seeing Winston, my favorite Ghostbuster, meet Sherlock Holmes, my favorite detective, it's like peanut butter meeting chocolate to form a Reese's peanut butter cup. This episode is a Reese's peanut butter cup. But the question is, if the Ghostbusters cannot use their proton packs on Moriarty, how do they stop him? Well, the answer lies in their traps. And it leads to, well, let's say a downer of an ending.
Number 8. The Grundel. This episode starts off with the Ghostbusters dealing with the Jabberwocky. After they had trapped them, they go back to Ecto 1 and found it stripped down. It turned out a kid named Larry had stripped it down and showed no remorse. And Peter wonders what makes a good kid go bad.
Oh, Peter, you will get your answer.
This episode revolves around two brothers named Lee and Alec. Lee had observed that his brother Alec has been acting very strange lately. At first he just assumes his brother is just acting up, but then he notices that Alec has been talking to a creature. And he begins to suspect this creature is making Alec do bad things. He informs the Ghostbusters of his suspicions after a little mishap in the auditorium. Winston informs him that they had never heard of anything like that before, but they would look into it and would get back to him if they find anything.
Egon does some research and discovers that the creature controlling Alec is a Grundel. What is a Grundel, you may ask?
A Grundle is a creature that makes children do bad things, and the more bad things that child does, the more he looks like a Grundle. And the more he looks like a Grundle, the more he becomes a Grundle. And then he would go out and pick another kid, and the cycle would just go on.
You know, there's a lot of truth in this scenario. I'm not saying that there are real Grundles in the world, but there are bad people who try to make kids like them. The hardest part is to make the kids realize that it's not cool to be like them until it's too late. And I appreciate that the writers are able to get this message out there without coming across as preachy.
Number 7. When Halloween was forever.
Halloween and Ghostbusters. Can a kid ask for a better combination?
The closer it gets to Halloween, the more the ghosts seem to be more difficult than they really should be. And Egon theorizes that the reason for this has something to do with Irish ruins that date back to when Halloween was first started. Well, he may be close to the truth because two goblins bust in the museum and release the creature known as Samhain. Samhain is the reason why we celebrate Halloween, and he's also in charge of the creatures of the night. He gathers them all together to try to make Halloween last forever. Well, Slimer's not exactly welcome among them, since he lives with the Ghostbusters.
What makes when Halloween lasts forever work is Samhain.
Like Gozer, Samhain is a god. All the creatures of the night obey him. Even Slimer had to come when he called. Now, one thing I found interesting is the fact they gave him the Irish accent, thus connecting him with the Celtic tales of Samhain, or however you pronounce that in real life. Now, I like the fact they gave him a purple robe and a pumpkin head.
For those of you who say that the Irish didn't have pumpkins, it's called artistic license. The Real Ghostbusters mostly has the guys deal with a different ghost each week. Samhain is one of the few who makes a reappearance. He appears in the episode Halloween 2.5 and would do a cameo here and there. He appears in the opening to Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters, as well as Extreme Ghostbusters, though he was never in an episode of Extreme Ghostbusters. Samhain would make appearances in comic books and would be featured in action figures. Samhain, the most iconic ghost created for this show.
Number 6. The Ghostbusters in Paris.
A lazy worker decides to take a nap in the office of Monsieur Eiffel at the Eiffel Tower. What he finds in the office is some equipment that was made by Monsieur Eiffel himself. But he accidentally breaks it and, no big deal to him. He's like, I'll just replace it. Nothing bad will happen, right? Well,
It definitely becomes a problem when ghosts start popping up at the Eiffel Tower, which causes tourists to stay away, leading to the loss of revenue.
maybe you shouldn't have took a nap in the office of Monsieur Eiffel, you lazy dope. The Ghostbusters are brought in to take care of the ghost at the Eiffel Tower. The government then pays for the hotel, which they get the best in all of Paris. So for 2 days they go everywhere but the Eiffel Tower.
When they finally arrive at the Eiffel Tower, they encounter some of the freakiest looking ghosts in the history of the show. I mean, just look at them. There's far too many for them to just use their traps.
In this episode we learn 2 things. One, Winston used to be a construction worker. I bet you didn't know that, especially if you've only seen the movies. And 2, Monsieur Eiffel was a Ghostbuster, and he had constructed the Eiffel Tower to be a ghost containment unit.
And since the equipment had been destroyed by that lazy worker, seriously, he should be fired for that. All the ghosts were allowed to escape, and in 12 hours, the tower would explode. The Ghostbusters should have been doing their job instead of goofing off for 2 days. I'm just saying.
Now, the idea that the Eiffel Tower is a ghost containment unit may sound silly, but it does work. Given the bloody history of France, it makes sense. I mean, like I've said, those are some freaky ghosts. They don't hesitate to kill. I mean, there was one scene where one of them went inside a gargoyle and was about ready to throw Winston off of Notre Dame. Those are some serious ghosts. So the next time you go to the Eiffel Tower and see some ancient equipment, do not break it. And if you do, replace it right away, because you might unleash a bunch of ghosts.